All right, let's move on to multiplying with fractions. We talked about integers multiplying. We multiplied with decimals, positive and negative. Now we're going to do multiplying with fractions. You've seen this standard before. If you want to write it down, more than happy to. All right, so let's take a look at this. What do we have here? So what we've got here is 1/2 multiplied times 6. A couple different ways we can look at this. One is we could just say this is 6 groups of 1/2, right? So what I could do here is, let's go ahead, and I'm going to draw in, okay, let's see. Whoops, that's not what I want. Let's do this and this. So I can have, there's a group, right? Put this in here, okay? And I get 1/2, okay? That's kind of hard to see. All right, there we go. 1/2, right? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this thing 6 times, right? Let's do that again. And again, okay? And so what I'm going to get is 1/2 6 times. Well, if I put this all together, that's going to be, right, 1, 2, 3, it's 6 halves, which when I put that all together makes 3 wholes. Okay, so that's one way we can do it. Another way we can do it is we can re-identify the whole. Okay, and so what we can do here is, instead of saying a whole is 1, what I can do is we can say a whole is 6. Okay, so let's see, we can just use a square. So instead I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I'm going to take 6. I'm going to break it into 2 groups, and I'm going to keep one of them. Okay, so okay, there's one group, there's 2 groups, and what do I get? I get 1 out of those 2 groups of this original. Okay, so I would end up with 3 whole. Okay, so this is how we can use a fraction with a whole number. So let's take a look at this again. All right, and let's go ahead and let's use let's do the first one. Let's do this. This is 6 groups of 2/3. Okay, so I can go ahead here and I'll put in whoops, I'm gonna have to cut these into thirds. Let's do it over here. Okay, so I have 6 groups. I'm going to cut these into pieces, right? Okay, and then I'm going to have each of these is 2/3, right? So I get this. So I get 2/3 6 times. Okay, and we're going to say, well, what is this? And if I count up all these pieces, right, what I'm going to get is I end up with 12 thirds, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I get 12 pieces. How big are those pieces? Those pieces are thirds. If I were to put them all together, this would equal a total of 4 wholes. Okay? So that's one way to do it. Another way, again, what we could do is, excuse me, is I could take, I could redo this, and let's make the whole 6. Okay, so we're going to start with 6, and you can choose which one you want to do here. Okay, so I can just say, let's just do this. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's the whole. Okay, these are the whole things. Okay, I get all of these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to break these into 3 groups, right? 3 groups, okay, and I'm going to get to keep 2 of them. So this is where I'm going to say my whole is 6, right? Because I'm going to take a part of a whole. Well, when I multiply by 6, I'm re-saying that this is the whole, and this is the part I'm taking of it. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to break this into 3 groups. Here's 1 group, here's 2 groups, here's 3 groups. Okay, so I've taken this 6 and I've created 3 groups, and then I get to keep 2 of them. Okay, well, what does 2 of those groups equal? It's going to equal 4 wholes, right? And once I broke this into 3 groups, I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and you end up with the same answer. All right, well, that's when you will multiply a fraction with a whole number. Well, let's take a look what happens when we take fractions with fractions, okay? Well, we have to remember that a fraction is a part of a whole, right? So if I'm going to do a fraction of a fraction, right? Fraction multiplied with fraction, what I'm doing is I'm going to take a part of, instead of a whole, I'm taking a part of a whole, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a whole, okay? I'm going to take part of it. And then I'm going to take part of that. So let's take a look what this looks like. Okay. So here's a basic one, right? 1/2 of 1/2. So the first thing I must do is I'm going to start with a whole. Okay. So let's start with a whole. Now notice what I'm going to do is when I create this, and I'm going to really encourage you to use grid paper. In fact, I'm going to give you some grid paper to do with this if you don't already have it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my whole based on these. Okay, I'm going to make this many rows and this many columns, right? Across and down, side to side. And you'll start to see why we do this more and more. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have a whole, right? So I'm going to take 1/2. And now typically I like to say, since I said it's a part of a whole, right? So this is 1/2 of 1/2 of the whole. In this case, the whole we'll say is 1. Okay, so I have one whole thing. I'm going to take half of it. Okay, so then I get to keep this, right? This is my amount. This is 1/2 of 1. Okay, so that's where I'm starting. And then I'm going to take half of that, right? I'm going to cut that into 2 pieces and keep one of them, right? So I took a whole, I cut it into 2 pieces, I kept one of them. That's what this looks like, right? This is the original 1/2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, okay? I'm going to take 1/2, okay? In fact, let's do the next part, we'll do in red, okay? Now what we're going to do 1/2 is I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut this piece in half and keep one of those, okay? Now, when I cut this piece in half and I want to talk about, my answer is going to tell me how much I have and the size of this piece, right? Well, how big is this piece? In order to figure that out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue cutting all the pieces, right? So what I've done is I've taken this half, cut it in half. Well, what that does is makes all of the pieces, right, fourths, and I get to keep one of those pieces, so it's 1/4. Okay? I take a part of a whole, and my answer is talking about it compared to the whole. Okay, I start with the whole. Here it is. I took 1/2. That's what I did here. This is what I get. Then I'm going to take 1/2 of that, right? This is the new. Now I'm going to start with this 1/2. I'm going to cut that into 2 pieces and keep one of those pieces. And my answer, I want to know how much do I have of the original amount, right? Not just, right? I want to know of the original amount. So what I get is I have one piece, and how big are those pieces? It would be as if I took the whole thing and cut it into 4 pieces. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's take a look at another one here. All right, now I have 1/2 of 1/4, right? And so there's 2 different ways I can go about this one. Let's go ahead and talk about, let's do one of them. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this, okay, I'm going to do 2 by 4. So when I draw my rectangle here, oh, that's too close. Let's do it here. I'm going to go 2 and then 4. Okay, and so then what I'm going to start with is I'm going to cut this. What I'm saying is I like to start here. We'll start here this time. Okay, so that was the whole, and I'm going to cut this into 4 pieces. Okay, I'm going to cut this 4 pieces. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, here's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Okay, and I'm going to get to keep. I get this piece, right? I'm taking 1/4 of that. Okay. So this here, right, this is this piece, right? This is 1/4. So now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take half of that. So let's go back into red. Okay, let's do that in red again. So I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do 1/2 of the 1/4. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, right? This is my piece. And so when I cut this one though, I'm going to cut all of the pieces all the way across because I need my answer to be in pieces of the whole. Now I get one of these pieces, right? So we'll take this one. Okay, and then this is the amount I get right here. Okay, and well, and how much is that? Well, this is going to be one. I get one piece, right? And how big is the piece? Are all of these pieces? Now they're 1/8. Okay. So let's try this another way. Let's try it looking at it. Let's say let's start by this time, let's cut it in half first. So I cut it in half, okay? And I get to keep this amount, okay? Then what I'm going to do is, so this is half, right? So I start with a half of a whole, and then I'm going to multiply it by a fourth. So I'm going to take 1/4 of that. Okay, well, that would be me cutting. I'm going to take this whole thing, and I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces, right? And I get to keep this one right here. Well, I need to cut these pieces also so that I can look at how big. I want to know how much this is, right? How big is that piece? Well, it's 1 piece, right, out of the 8 that I cut, so it's 1/8. Okay. Now, a lot of you might be looking and be like, well, yeah, Mr. Clark, all you have to do is just multiply across 1 times 1 and 2 times 4. Okay, but the key here is if you sometimes you're going to forget these rules. And what we really want to do is want to know what are we doing when we're taking a fraction of a fraction? Like, what does that mean? And this is going to help us later when we start talking about percentages, because we're going to take percentages of other percentages. And we're going to take percentages of other numbers. And if you understand this idea of taking a fraction of another fraction or taking a part of another part, it's going to help, okay? All right, why don't you go ahead, why don't you try drawing a picture of this one, okay? And you try doing this one on your own. Go ahead. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and draw our square here, and I'm going to do a 2 by 3, right? 2 by 3. So let's go 2 by 3, okay? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, okay, I'm going to start with 2/3, right? So I'm going to cut this thing into 3 pieces, and I get to keep 2 of those pieces. So I get to keep this one here, and I get to keep this one here. Okay? But now what happens is, now I'm going to take 1/2 of that. So I'm going to take this amount here, and I'm going to cut it in half. Okay? And then I'm going to continue. Right? I don't get these pieces, but I'm going to cut those in half also. Okay, and I get 1 of those, right? Now that I cut it in half, I'm going to get 1 of those pieces. So I'm going to get this amount right here. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to say, okay, how much is this of the original blue amount, right? So then what do I have? Well, I have 2 pieces, and how big are those pieces? Well, the whole thing is now cut into 6ths, okay? Which simplifies to 1/3, right? Because what I can do is I can say, okay, well, this is 2 out of 6 pieces, right? But what I could do also is I could look at this and I could say, oh, I could put these 2 together here, right? Here's a group of 2, and here's a group of 2. So the amount that I have shaded is really 1 group, right, out of the 3 pieces, right? I could cut in pieces there. All right. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Why don't you go ahead and try this one? All right, let's try it out. I'm going to do a 4 by 3. 3, 4. Okay, let's cut it into 4 pieces. Or we're going to cut it into 3. How did I do this last one? Let's see. So I should stay consistent. I went too wide. Okay, so let's do that. Let me redraw this. So we'll go 4 and then 3. Okay, and then I'll cut it across. Let's do the same colors. Okay, I'm going to go 2. No, sorry. I'm going to go 3, cut it into thirds first. Okay, I always like to start with that second one. You're more than welcome to do it. You're going to end with the same answer. You can do it either way. That's a terrible line. Okay, so I got 2 of those. All right, 2/3. There's another 2/3. All right, or I'm sorry, another 1/3. Here's 1/3. Here's 2/3. Okay, so that's my new beginning. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3/4 of that. So what I'm going to do is let's cut that into 4 pieces. So I'm going to take this thing and cut it into 4 pieces. Okay. All right, you can almost ignore that green line right now. Okay, and I'm going to cut this also. Okay, and then what do I get? I get 3 of those. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get, here's 1 of them, here's 2 of them, here's 3 of them. Okay, so I get, what do I get now? I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. How big are these pieces? Well, they are, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 3, 6, 9, there are 12, okay? And now when I look at this, I say, ooh, wait a second. Here's a group of, this is one group of 6, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 also. So really what I get is, this is 1/2 of the whole thing, okay? All right, well, let's see. Should we do another one? Oh yeah, I want to talk about the negatives. All right, so when we talk about this, this is the same one as the beginning problem, right? If we go back and take a look at 1/2 of 1/2, right? It ends up being 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4, okay? Well, our same rules are going to apply, right? We knew that this was equal to 1/4, right? Well, this is a negative, okay? A negative times a positive, negative 1/4. End of story, okay? Because what I'm saying is, remember, you're going to end up with 4 pieces, and this is just going to describe, are you gaining them or losing them, right? The top number is just telling you how many of them you get or how many you lose. The bottom number is telling you the size of that piece. So then why don't we try this one? Why don't you go ahead and do that one? This is the same problem as earlier. It just has some negatives in it. All right, so hopefully you looked at this and you said, okay, this was 1/2 of 1/4 was 1/8. Okay, and then I look at a negative times a negative, right? Well, this is, I'm going down, but then I'm taking, going the opposite way, and then the opposite way again, right? If you remember, a negative multiplied by another negative ends up being a positive. So I'm going to have positive 1/8. Okay, you are more than welcome to practice on your own. I sent you some Khan Academies earlier in the day. You can go ahead and practice those. We'll also do plenty of practice in class. Oh, excuse me. Please bring grid paper if you have it. Oh, I gotta go.